All right, how's everybody doing here tonight? Welcome to episode 26 of Comic Book Team Up with myself and John's Longbox. We don't have a scheduled person on tonight, a scheduled guest, just because I'm trying to get a couple of people on and I've been fighting off a cold. So things kind of got out of my grasp. So I figured if somebody shows up, somebody shows up. If not, John and I are just going to be talking about some obscure good comics. Well, some of them don't have to be good, but we can talk about that too. Uh, and we'll listen to you what you have to say in the chat. So, John, I posted a couple of things on Twitter this week. You said you're going to review one of them. The first one that I can think of was Doomsday +1, which is early John Byrne work. Did you do that video yet? I didn't see that.
Not do the video yet because work is just kicking my butt, and so I've been working overtime. You know, it's this is like the busy season for construction in New York. It's the weather is just perfect. So I got a. But here's the comic. In case anybody has any doubt, I'm a John Byrne fanatic. I love the man. I go to his website and send emails like every 2 weeks. Come on my channel, even though it says I will not go on anybody's channels. I will not do interviews. You don't get what you don't ask for. I love John Byrne. I met him. He was snarky. I don't care. He to me, he is the ultimate superhero comic book artist. Him and George Perez. So I can't get George Perez on my channel, but there's still a chance of John Byrne. So I've been going back in time and just getting older and older John Byrne stuff. I got Wheelie and the Chopper Bunch, which is his first comic book work.
Yeah.
And then I got Doomsday +1. This is his first comic. Matter of fact, I'm going to open it up because I forget if he wrote it or not. I forget.
I don't even remember if he wrote it.
Yeah, but it's just like
I don't think so.
It's just John Byrne, I mean, look at this. This is just perfect, classic John Byrne. But maybe I'll do Wheelie and the Chopper Bunch. But I don't know who wrote this. But it's so bad. It's good. It's
Carlton. It's one of the Carlton comics, right? If I remember.
Yeah. Charlton. I don't know. Charlton. Is it Carlton or is it Charlton? I always say Charlton.
I don't know. Must be Charlton. My ability to pronounce names is awful, so I'll go with yours.
Yeah, well, you live in a foreign country called Canada, where you're barely speaking
of that, where's John Byrne live now? That's what I'm wondering. Not that we need to talk about it.
He's from Calgary, Edmonton? Right?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Born in England, and then he either moved to Calgary or Edmonton, I forget, and then moved to New York.
Okay. The funny thing is, with the John Byrne stuff, I was listening to a couple of guys have a conversation about this at the comic shop a while ago, and they were saying that what he's doing now is like basically writing some kind of short stories based upon like Star Trek art. I don't know. It sounded really weird. It's not that he's actually drawing anything. He's just writing, story blurbs.
I joined the John Byrne Robotics website. That's his site, but the formatting drove me crazy. So, and he's notoriously quick with your band, you kicked out, So I don't even think I posted. I got to go check to see if I'm still registered as a member of his forum. But he has that old school, I don't know what you'd call it, style of threads, and my brain can't function. And if you ask a question that's already been asked, you're banned. If you say something in the wrong area, you're banned. So I'm like, I don't want to hate John Byrne, so I just opted out. But he'll do commissions, and then Vaz says, would Byrne do a chapter commission from one of your stories, or would that be too costly?
Probably too costly.
Probably too costly. I don't think the man needs money, and I think he does commissions as a living, and I think he sells like original artwork and auctions it off, and he could just spend a day drawing and sell it. You know what I mean? So I imagine if he wanted to work on a comic script, he probably would work. He could pick and choose anybody he wants. I just don't think he wants to. I know he's doing if you go to Bird Robotics, he's making X-Men comics. He's basically making fan fiction X-Men comics. And Marvel has offered him money for it, and he's like, nope, this is mine. This, he's not selling, he's not charging, so there's no rules against John Byrne, one of the best X-Men artists, making X-Men comic books for fan fiction. It's awesome. He's, you know, RJ, have you read a comic called Powers by Brian Michael Bendis?
I don't think so. No.
It's about cops in a world where there's people with powers. And I thought it was excellent. So I was all excited when Brian Michael Bendis went to Marvel. Boy, was I wrong about that. But, when Brian Michael Bendis does his own stuff, he's actually pretty good. When he's playing with other people's toys, he's that jerk kid that breaks it. I broke your toys. You got to buy a new one now. But one of the characters was called Neutron. And Neutron's secret identity was Johnny Redbeard. And it was John Byrne. And it was funny because he was the most powerful superhero in the world, and all he did was argue with people on the internet rather than be a superhero. I thought that was pretty funny. On John Byrne.
I think it's funny that you get these comic artists right now who are basically in the position that I think Jack Kirby wanted to be when he was getting older, because I heard it was from an interview. I don't know if it was with Kirby himself or not, but basically he would have these kids come over to his house, and because they just wanted to see him do art, right? And they just randomly show up, and he would actually draw things for them and give them a picture, and then his wife Roz would take them away from them as they left the house.
Yeah, as they would leave, she would like frisk them down for the artwork.
Yep. She'd say, nope, this is our living. Nope, you're not taking that, right? Because they had to sell them in order to just keep their head above water. But and then you got these artists today like John Byrne. Yeah, he could just do some random art in the about nothing and sell it on the internet, and he doesn't need to do comics anymore.
Right. So, that's one of my fantasies, of winning the lottery and just like opening up like not just a comic book store, but like a comic book museum kind of thing, and hiring John Byrne to do a mural on the wall and have Alex Ross do a mural on the other wall. You know what I mean? That's what I daydream. When I was in my 20s, I daydreamed about harems. Now I daydream about comic book artists.
I should give a shout out to everybody who's in the chat here. Sage was here early. Sequential Treasures is here. How you doing? Manny? Vaz. And let's see. Tony's here. Calliope is here. And Warren the Archangel's here as well. So hello to everybody in the chat.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming.
The other book that I just brought up today that I started to think about was Cyber Rat. Did you ever? It was the Neil Adams run of New Comics. What the heck was that? Continuity Comics.
What was the name of the comic?
Cyber Rat.
No. I remember there was Skate Man. There was Miss Mystic. There was a detective one, but I don't remember Cyber Rat. Wow, Margie, you stumped me. You mentioned a comic that I didn't know.
I love Cyber Rat. It was great because I think Neil Adams did all the art himself for that one. It was like Megalith. I think he did Megalith as well.
I remember Megalith.
And the other ones, Crazy Man, but can't remember who did the art for Crazy Man, if he just did the covers or not.
Yeah, Crazy Man it was like a more demented version of the Joker. I remember that.
And I can't remember if he, because that was the first issue or the second, where he's basically digging himself up out of a grave. So very Craven-esque.
I remember I hunted down and I got all of those Miss Mystic comics, and they're still in my Longbox for 25 years that I haven't read yet.
I never really liked Miss Mystic, but I think that if I remember correctly, Adams did the art for some of those as well.
Yeah, and whatever happened to Continuity Comics? They would make like one issue, two issues. Like I always had the feeling that like publishing monthly comics was never their goal. Was that just like to show people their art, for like to hire them to do other stuff?
I really don't. I think it was an actual attempt to make a comic company by Neil Adams, but he just couldn't do it. He just couldn't get the legs to go for it, because the funny thing was that I found Cyber Rat and the rest of the Continuity Comics in this basically 7-Eleven knockoff store, and that was the only place I could find them. I couldn't get them at the comic shop. I couldn't get them anywhere else except for this on the spinner rack of this stupid little store. It was basically a knockoff of 7-Eleven, and it was next to a McDonald's. Every time we went to McDonald's, we'd go over and check out, see if they had any new comics. But they did. Like, I mean, every month they had new comics on the rack. So that's why I go back month after month for Cyber Rad. And I don't know how many issues are actually got up to, but it looked like, if I remember correctly, the story cut off at a point where it wasn't finished. But I don't. Again, this is thinking back to when this actually came out, because it's probably the last time I read them. But it didn't look like it was supposed to stop at that point.
You got me real curious. That's a comic I don't know. Mike, my comic shop.
So basically, the plot of the comic was that I think the guy's in like a grunge band or some kind of punk band or something like that. Anyways, he gets in an accident, and then he wakes up and he's basically a more, let's say, trimmed down version of the Bionic Man, but he doesn't know it. He's basically been turned into a cyborg, but he thinks he's an actual human being. And then people and things try to start to kill him because he is this hybrid kind of cyborg human, and he doesn't know what's going on. And then his body reacts and he turns into this thing, this cyborg like thing, and he just loses it because he doesn't know what's going on with his own body and his own life, right?
So now I'm looking at it was Cyber Red 1 to 7 in 1991 by Continuity. Then there was a one shot, and then there was a 2-issue series, and that was it.
I honestly thought that it was his attempt to really put together something that could compete with Marvel, and basically do his own thing, because he wanted to do his own thing. He always wanted to do his own thing. He's Neil Adams. I mean, really.
Yeah. Vaz says Miss Mystic was originally published by Pacific Comics. That's why I got it then, because Pacific Comics was one of the first it was Pacific Comics and Comico or Comico, or however you pronounce it, were the first two non-Marvel and DC companies that I became obsessed with. And I would get anything by Pacific and anything by Comico. So I got Miss Mystic by, that's right, Vaz. So when I saw it came out by Continuity Comics later, I had to pick them up. Yeah, Vaz, you're right. Because Pacific, did you get anything by Pacific?
I think it was, no, but Comico, I used to buy, what the heck was the name of it? It was a detective based story. It was a woman and a man. They were detectives, and it wasn't only Comico. They published in a couple of different places. I can't remember, because I think who the heck did the covers for them? Because they were beautiful covers, but they're good stories as well. Neil, not Neil Adams, but good heavens, we were just talking about him there the other day. He did X-Men, or he did Excalibur. I can't think of his name off the top of my head.
Matt Wagner.
No, the first Excalibur, the artist for
Excalibur. I'm thinking I'm thinking of Mage. Geez, Neary.
No. Let me.
Neary, Excalibur. Right.
No, Marvel's Excalibur. So, but names just elude me every time I want them. He's a beautiful artist, and I should know. I know his name, because anyways. I was talking to Nick about him last time we were on a couple of weeks ago. But anyways, he did the covers for them, and I think the guy who did the original art, or the first art for the revamped Justice League America, did some covers. Anyways, but it was Detective Incorporated, or Detective something like that. But anyways, that was the only Comico books that I regularly bought, because again, those titles jumped from one place to another.
Comico had a problems. I think the owner borrowed money from people he shouldn't have borrowed money from, and ended up like selling stuff that he didn't really have. Like Bill Willingham lost the Elementals because the owner sold the rights, and I think he's still bitter about it, which I don't blame him. That was his first. Yeah, Alan Davis is, I think, who.
Yes. I think Alan Davis did a couple of covers, and
was Mage Agency, right?
Maze Agency. That's it.
Yeah, that was Comico. That's another comic that's in my box of stuff that I didn't read yet. Yeah, such good stuff. Pacific Comics, I remember it was Gru the Wanderer, Twisted Tales. It was the original Elric Melnibone books. I love Pacific Comics. They were so good. They didn't last too long, and most of the stuff jumped ship to EC Comics, which became another company I was obsessed with. And then there was like First and Eclipse, EC. There was
Who
so many.
published the Elric stuff that Walter Simonson did?
Oh, it's right over here on my spinner rack. Yep. It's Helix, which was DC.
Oh, okay.
Helix was like another imprint within DC that kind of just got absorbed by Vertigo. It's Transmetropolitan was originally Helix, and then Helix went under, and everything just became Vertigo.
Sequential Sea Treasures is saying here, anyone here remember Capital Comics and their book Whisperer?
Yeah,
I don't remember that at all.
I got Whisper. Anybody remember Shuriken by Reggie Byers? It was like one of the first like manga influenced American comics, and it was about a girl named Shuriken who threw shurikens at people. But I remember he did a signing at my comic store when I was a kid, and without getting too crude, I was dating a girl. We were in high school, and I'll beat around the bush. She was like, "Tonight's the night." So, and that was the night of the signing. And Larry, the owner, was like, "Hey, John, we're all going out to dinner afterwards." I was like, "No, I got something I got to do." And he's like, "Come on, I'm treating it in." And Reggie Byers like, "I don't give a crap." So there you go. But Whisper, yes, Whisper was that First Comic? No, it's Capital Comics, because Capital didn't last too long, and I think it went to First. That was if I remember correctly, Paul Glacy did the covers for them, and he always drew those sexy women, that look like noir covers. Paul Glacy is another.
First always published.
I like Paul's comment. John's not a team player. Not when you're 17 years old.
But I can't remember because, again, was the First Comics that published Airboy? I think Chuck Dixon wrote Airboy for First.
It was Eclipse Comics.
Oh, it was Eclipse, right?
Yes, I remember it was Kate Ironwood. She was the editor. She was the one who pretty much gave Chuck Dixon his first job. And he's always like, yeah, she was a full-on communist and she hired me. We had no problems working together back then.
What the heck did First Comics publish then? I can't remember because I know
First Comics published Badger. The Indian, the comic. Well, I can't think of it, but Nexus, Badger, American Flag, Aztec Ace, and one that it's in this stack right over here. I'm up to issue 12, and I can't even think of the title. Yeah, 17-year-old John chose Hoes over Bros. You're absolutely right there, Honduran honeymoon. Let's say I was punished though, because it didn't actually work out the way it was supposed to work out. So, Scout, sequential travel, yes, Scout, Dreadstar. There was a lot of good first comics.
Dreadstar, that's it. That's what I'm thinking of. I was just trying to think of the name of Dreadstar today.
Excuse me, sorry about sneezing. Yeah, Michael Gold did the covers for Whisper. Oh, I didn't know that. Wow, I didn't know. I don't think I have the Capital Comics of Whisper.
I think they're doing a new Dreadstar right now, are they not?
Yes.
Was it you that did the interview with the fellow who's doing the new Dreadstar?
No, I wish. Well, it's still Jim Starlin doing Jim. I've been messaging Jim Starlin and he hasn't responded. So I'm not going to give up. Persistence is the key. It worked with my 17-year-old girlfriend, and it worked with Jim Shooter. I'm hoping it works with Jim Starlin. But Jim Starlin has Dreadstar versus the Inevitable, which is, him capitalizing on Thanos. Because Jim Starlin created Thanos. So that I just got that. That was a crowdfunded comic. I think he's doing a sequel to that. there's a lot of big names doing crowdfund. Like JMD Mateus is doing some really good. He calls it the Mateus, the DeMatteis verse. I think there's 5 comics that they're all outstanding. I can't wait for issue number 2.
He's got the fellow working on it. He's almost got an Archie style to his comics, right, or to his art. That's doing the Mateus stuff.
Oh, what a new comic now?
No, the stuff that he just published, I think it was like last year. I don't know. I didn't actually get it, but I saw it on must have been Kickstarter.
Oh yeah, I got he did one comic. The comic you're probably thinking of is Layla, which is actually my favorite out of the 3. It's about a little girl who doesn't know she's dead, and she's searching the afterlife for her grandfather, but it's really like the devil is pretending to be a grandfather and is like leading her to hell. It's like I'm getting stressed out because the art is so nice and everything, you know what I mean? Because Mateus is always very spiritual and, searching for whatever, God in his comics. And, I just read, speaking of him, I just read this. Talk about obscure. This is him doing like a goof on Wizard of Oz, a Badazad. The only problem is it's 3 issues came out and you never finished the story. And I'm really, really loving the story. And when he was on my channel, he talked about this, Brooklyn Dreams, and I didn't know about it. This is excellent. This is basically, autobiographical of Mateus growing up in Brooklyn. As a kid, names had changed, and and it's just fascinating the way he tells stories. He's a little kid that got arrested, and that caused problems, and then like he was remembering about when he was a real little kid going to a funeral. It's like a very, the way you and I talk, RJ. We don't stay on one topic. We go back and forth, and then we remember something to come back. It's but this is written down, so he planned it all this way. It's really, really good. I mean, it's not superheroes. It's fake autobiography, I guess is the only way to describe it. It's really, really good. I'm a big fan of DeMatteis. He for those of you who watch and you don't know who he is, he was one of the half of with Keith Giffen. They did the Justice League, the Bwahaha one punch, Batman takes out Green Lantern one punch, all that stuff. So everybody loves his work. He also wrote the Kraven's Last Hunt, which is one of the best comic book stories of all time, I think. Phenomenal writer, but he when he's doing his own stuff, it's very like I don't know, like he's spiritual and longing. He did a series called The Seekers that I completely missed, and I just picked it up like a year ago, and it's fascinating. Just it's about a Hollywood screenwriter who his first movie's a hit, and then he gets caught up in drugs and hookers and everything, and loses his family, and he loses his daughter, and he just realizes that he lost everything. He's rich, and then it's just him trying to make it back into his daughter's life. It's really heartbreaking and good story. Not superheroes.
His JLA stuff was the first real comic that made me laugh.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Comic books are not funny. You know what I mean? There's very rarely can we think of funny comics. Anybody in the chat could list funny comics, but that JLA actually had me laughing. That was pretty good. Because Keith, to think that funny stuff came out of Jay Matthews, who's not really known as a funny guy. But they're like the Beatles, Lennon and McCartney. They worked together. They made this great music, and then if you ask me separately, they never were as good.
When I asked Don Chin to do a story for me, a backup story, because he wrote the backup story for what's coming out now for Thomas Valiant #2, I told him about the Mateus stuff, and I said, "This is what I want it to be like," because I can't write anything funny, right? So I said, "Don, Don, you want to write something funny? Write something funny for me, based off of something like that," because basically it goes back to the mid '80s in the story, and it's basically when Thomas Valiant was Putty Man, and he's trying to join the Legion of Justice, which is my spoof on the JLA. Oh, we have a guest here coming in.
It better not be Telepathic Bunny.
Oh,
Oh,
there we go.
there goes the property values of this chat.
I see a link, I follow it. Okay,
Yeah.
I got to send a link. That's all I know.
How
Anyway,
you doing, Coop?
doing fine, doing fine.
We're just talking obscure comics right now.
Oh wow, that's a big subject.
Let's ask you: are
Mhm.
there any comics that you read that were actually funny?
um,
Because I always found that most comics that are trying to be funny
yeah.
were not funny.
Well, I guess some parts of Cash Grab were kind of funny.
Uh,
You
I
know,
got that right here.
you know, I yeah.
Didn't read it yet, but I got it.
Well, I don't think it was is funny in the way that they meant to be funny.
That's a good way to put it.
Kind of like my face.
Yeah, well, yeah. There you go. You know what do you know? You stuck with it, right? I know the pain. I don't know. I Mad Magazine used to be really
Oh, Man
hilarious.
Magazine, yeah. That to me, that is the gold. Like the Marvel humor books, like Not Brand X and Arg,
Yeah,
and what's the other one? Spoof. They were terrible, and of course, I bought them,
right.
and they're chores to read.
Damage
Yeah.
Control. Yeah, that was awful.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
I'll say Mike Barron's Florida Man is legit funny, and
Yeah, it definitely has some moments.
well, it's funny because it's from the situation, which I find to
Yeah,
be more funny than like most comic books. Instead of the Hulk, he's the Bulk.
right.
You know,
Well, you know, the Plastic Man, he used to have some pretty funny comics.
the Joe Cole ones.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
And contrary to popular belief, Plastic Man was the straight man. It
Yep.
was he was the straight man in a world gone mad kind of thing. And then when they
Right.
brought him back into DC, they made him Jim Carrey, just zany.
Yeah, right.
Ooh, my shoulder just popped.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
That ain't good.
Oh, that feels
uh,
That's funny
well,
because we were just talking about the book the backup story I got Don Chin to write for me, which
yeah.
is I told him do it like a J.M. D. Mateus kind of
Mhm.
thing, but it's Thomas Valiant, so he's doing it in a Plastic Man kind of
Oh,
way,
wow.
right? And the thing was that I had gotten this old bunch of old Batman comics,
Mhm.
and I can't remember who was writing them. This is like late '60s at least,
Right.
but I sat here and I read them. This was probably 5-6 years ago, and I
Mhm.
just was rolling around laughing because they were meant to be ridiculous. I
Right.
mean the things in them like what was it? Batman was who the heck was it? It's like the Riddler or something like that was trying to steal
Mhm.
all the zoo animals and he was taking them off on a ship and Batman stopped him and then Batman was basically like using the giraffe next to swing around and things like that and I'm just losing it reading these comics because yeah they were meant to be funny at one point.
yeah.
Well, mhm. Go
I
ahead.
always thought the Silver Age DC comics. I didn't
Yeah.
particularly like them because I always thought the creators kind of like it's comic books for kids. Kids are stupid.
Right.
And then when you get to Jack Kirby and Stan Lee,
Yeah.
Stan Lee would argue with like, no, kids will look up the words. Kids aren't stupid. If kids find that it's difficult, they'll work to understand it.
Right.
So I always thought that was the difference between Marvel and DC is, until like the late
Mhm.
70s. Well, the exception, of course, being those war comics
Yeah.
and Western comics that I avoided like the plague until Chuck Dixon recommended them. And he's
Yeah.
absolutely right. Those 70s war and DC is some great comics.
Well, a guy that he sent me a script. I get sent scripts all the time. But this one was unique in that it was meant to be funny, and I read through it, and he was like, "Did you find it funny?" And I was like, "Well, the problem is you don't have your jokes structured right." Okay, he didn't quite understand that there has to be not only does there have to be the joke, there has to be the object of a joke or somebody the reaction to the joke, and sometimes the reaction to the joke is funnier than the joke itself. But you have to have you have to know what the premise of the joke is. You have to know who it's on, and then you have to know how that person's going to react to the joke.
I
You know,
I tried to write comedy and I gave
yeah.
it up. You know,
It's a lot more complicated than anybody really believes. You know, that's um, you know, watch them stand up sometimes, the really good ones. There is a lot going on underneath there, you know, and
yeah.
you have to like Norm Macdonald's would tell a 45-minute joke, and it's like
That if you or I told the same joke, people would not
no,
laugh. Yeah,
nobody
but
would go with you on it, you know.
he had the deadpan charm that worked for him. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Well, he was like that crazy uncle who with the really dirty jokes, and you just knew there was going to be a payoff, and so you went on a journey with him because you knew it was going to come out somewhere, you know, and
I I forget
loved it.
who it was. I think it was the Critical Drinker said that
Hmm.
that a lot of comedy writers will also write horror and
Yeah,
horror because they both have to do with timing.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I never thought about it, but he's absolutely right. Like, you know, you got to time horror right, but I
Hmm.
still find comedy to be I wrote one joke at issue 2 of Heroic Tales.
Right.
You know, I want to see if anybody actually laughs at it.
Well, you know,
Don't laugh at my book, not at the joke. Yeah.
Some of the Friday the 13th movies are hilarious. I mean, absolutely. I mean, drop. You were crying. You're crying. That's so funny.
Oh, my brother would take my brother's into horror, and he used to take me
Mhm.
to every year. There seemed like there was a Friday the 13th movie,
Yeah.
and we were like laughing, kicking the chair in front of us, laughing. You know,
Right.
everybody else is scared. Me, and my brother, like, guy's head got cut off. RJ, you into horror at all?
A little bit, but I was going to say it's funny that you mentioned the fact that people used to send you comedies because people at the first of my channel used to send me horror books, and they would
Oh,
say, "Read
really?
this for me, will you, and
Mhm.
tell me what you think of it." And I'm really not into horror that much, and I just had to let them down easy. It was like that, you know, you keep on saying
Right.
it's a slow burn, but I didn't really find it horrible at all.
All right. Well, Jason Takes Manhattan is probably the funniest of all of them. It's totally ridiculous, but there's some really just laugh out loud funny
Yeah.
moments, you know. Like he's walking past this gang and he's just like he's doing that serious Jason walk, you know. He's got places to go. And they start like talking smack to him and he turns around, pulls it up, they're like, "Whoa, okay, man. Yeah, yeah, you're good, dude. Just go on." You know.
I
He just slides it
any
down and just goes.
any horror franchise, if it goes long enough, it'll devolve into comedy.
Devolve into parody, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it's
Mhm.
brings us back to parody.
Yep.
For the most part, I'm not a fan of parody. You know,
Ah,
I think parody is
me
like
neither. Me
the
neither.
cheapest, laziest comedy going.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Saturday Night Live made a 30-year career out of parody. You know,
Right.
so
Right. Well,
so
well, let's just say 20-year career out of
yeah,
parody.
okay. Yeah.
I don't know
And
what they've been doing. I don't know what they've been
Uh,
doing.
in Mad Magazine, that was
Mhm.
the
Yep.
exception to the rule. But like for the most part in comic books, it's just like instead of the Thor, it's Boar. You know,
Yeah.
I am the Incredible Boar.
Right.
Funny.
Well, I mean, one of the reasons why you know, comedy has just taken such a hit recently is
Is everybody?
because yeah, well, that and you know, people just don't understand that you have to understand what's absurd about something.
exactly.
And
You got
and
it.
and you know, that's one of the reasons why Trump is so hilarious is because Trump understands what's absurd, you know, and so and he knows that he's absurd. Okay, he
Right.
knows he's in on it. He's in on it, right? And that's and
That's why I get so mad when people like, and Trump said this. I'm like, dude, do you know Trump?
are
He's
you paying
exaggerating.
attention?
You know that he knows that he's exaggerating. You know, he's a performer. He's
Yeah.
you know
Only Rosie O'Donnell is one of the best lines, one of the greatest lines ever on live television. I mean,
yeah.
it's just brilliant.
You hate women. That's just Rosie O'Donnell. And the other time was a what you see we with Hillary Clinton at the debate said something. I forget exactly what she said. He goes,
Well, when she says, "Well, good thing you're not in charge," he says, "I know you'd be in jail."
he goes, yeah, you know, that was even the audience. They're like, whoa! Comedians were examining that line the next day. Yeah, he's got good comedy, Tommy.
Well, Shane Gillian is probably the best comedian working right now, and he was talking about that. We were so used to debates being this thing, right? And he says, I know. He's like, one thing I miss about Trump is the fact that debates were finally interesting,
Right.
And he says, he says all these candidates line up, and he's like, you're sticking all these like politicians in with this psychopath, right? And they had no idea. And they're sitting here like, well, I believe in prayer in schools. Oh yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, prayer in schools. All right, all right. And I believe in lowering the national debt. Yeah, that's good. And then it's like Ted. Then it comes to Trump, and he's like, Ted Cruz's wife is ugly. It's like, whoa, whoa, you can do that.
Uh,
And
to
then it's
steer us
like,
away from politics, we're going to talk
I-
about bad comics.
right.
Anybody
There you
read Bloodbath, by a 2-issue series, came out in 1993? The absolute nadir of DC Comics.
Oh, really?
This
Bloodbath,
is-
wasn't that a series wide or a DC wide arc event?
Yeah, this is the culmination of the Bloodline story that was
Right.
in all of the annuals. And it was just, the aliens would come down, they would suck up people's brain marrow or whatever, and then like 1 out of 1,000 of them would get superpowers. The only
Right.
thing that came out of Bloodlines that was good was Hitman, which is one of my favorite comics of all time.
Yeah.
But other than that, but look at this. This is Mullet Superman. This is Booster
Right.
Gold in the bulky armor. Azrael Batman.
Yeah.
It's just like everything bad in DC. And then
Right.
at the same time, they had like Alan Moore's Swamp Thing and Starman and all of these great Vertigo titles. And I know, RJ, you're not a big fan of the Vertigo comics, are you?
Not particularly. I bought Hellblazer from the first issue, but not much else than that, really.
Yeah, Hellblazer was a comic I got all 300 issues. I love that series.
Well,
All my favorite writers at some point did some Hellblazer. Oh, we got a super chat.
Oh,
Hey.
Taz, thank you very much for the £5 super chat. He says, hello, RJ, John, and
Hey.
to our guest. Thank you very much, Taz.
Hey,
Taz is
Taz.
always great.
Love
see
the baby. How old's the baby, Taz?
Yeah.
Shirtless Bear Fighter was pretty fun. I didn't realize. I guess I didn't realize it was supposed to be funny. I just saw it and didn't think anything of it.
Well, the best comedy team, I think, I don't know if they started out to be comedy, but Booster Gold and Blue Beetle.
Yeah, the blue and gold team.
Justice League International.
Yep.
It's just like right in this oasis of craziness. There was like these two guys that were just kind of like this is kind of nuts,
Yeah,
and they're kind of like
they had like a regular guy friendship. You know what I mean?
right.
Yeah,
They did.
Plus, Blue Beetle,
Booster was like the over the top braggadocio guy, and Blue Beetle was like completely totally straight man, and it was brilliant. It was just a brilliant when they killed off Blue Beetle, that just
that was a misstep. That was an absolute misstep.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So bad.
But-
You know what's funny is Maxwell Lord always was a goof
Right.
on Trump.
Yeah.
So when people were complaining, and I didn't see the movie, but Wonder Woman 84,
84. Yeah.
the Maxwell Lord was obviously Trump, and people were saying, I'm like, dude, you don't know your history of comics. Maxwell Lord was Donald Trump back in
Right.
in the 90s and 80s.
Oh yeah.
I really think that Justice League International was one of those books that people didn't appreciate. I really liked that series. It was really, and it was funny too in places, especially the fact I think it was like issue 1 or 2 because they were in like in England, and Flash was there with them because he's part of the team, and they're saying to him, "Do you realize that your name is actually an insult to the English people?" His name was Wally, right?
Right.
Oh.
You're a Wally.
Oh, right. Yeah. Company Men by Yukimo Sabi, a man called Kimosabi. He has this really great bit in it where he's got a super speed guy named Ramjet, okay? And they basically find out that there's an ambush that's about to take, or that there's like this meeting that's about to take place. and they just go go, you know, and they send him on, right? And he's super speed, right? So he gets there and he realizes that it was an ambush for the group that he's with, right? He finds out that it's an ambush, and well, gosh, gee, he just triggered it, and he's so fast that he's there by himself. You know, he has no backup. He's way ahead of his backup, and it just like it was the first time I ever saw somebody uh like just like portray just how shitty it must be to be super speed. You know, because you're always going to outrun your backup. You're always going to outrun everybody else.
I
You know,
thought one of the best problems of being super fast was Quicksilver. So I forget
yeah.
who it was, but in the Avengers, they were saying, "Why are
Mhm.
you such a jerk all the time?" And he goes, "You know, when you're at motor vehicles and you just want to get your paperwork done and you're waiting in line for
Yeah.
hours," he goes, "That's my life."
That's my
Because,
life. Yeah.
because I process everything at such a speed that everywhere I go, it's like waiting in line at motor vehicles, and you wonder why I'm a jackass. I was like,
yeah.
wow, that
Yeah,
was
my whole entire day is hanging out the DMV. You know,
yeah, made,
that
made
would
me
turn somebody psycho. Yeah.
made me like Quicksilver a little bit more.
Well,
I don't know.
of all the things in Zootopia, the fact that the DMV were you know had a bunch of sloths in it was just perfect. You know,
That's funny. That's funny.
it was great.
Here's a question for you. What
Mhm.
you know, I'm trying to phrase it properly, but like
Mhm.
out of all the superheroes, like again, Quicksilver, his problem was he processed things so fast that if,
Right.
but, like I always have a soft spot when they have like the superpowers are a curse, like the obvious one being Ben Grimm. You know,
Yeah.
nobody likes me. I'm a horrible freak. But
Yeah.
I always had a soft spot for guys like Cyclops or Black
Mhm.
Bolt because their powers were so destructive and they had to, you know, everybody kind of goofs on Cyclops, but he had
Right.
this awesome responsibility where
Yeah.
literally his looks could kill, where he had to be in control.
Right.
If he lost control, he could open up his eyes, take out school, kill people, kill his
Oh yeah.
girlfriend. You know what I mean? All this stuff. So he was always a stick in the mud, and it made me like him better. And of
Yeah.
course, Bolt was the same.
Right.
RJ Coop. Any characters that have that kind of flaw that you like?
Hard to think of, but when you mention Cyclops, it really does bring back that 2 issue miniseries, which was the Asgardian series when they went there and Jean Grey was able to block his force beams with her mind so that he could actually see. That
Yeah,
that was actual, dramatic moment in a comic that was just made up of the simplest thing.
Right.
yeah.
Well, there's this moment in Mutant Massacre where they rescue Leech, and he's carrying Leech, and he realizes, and he's able to pull his visor off and just be a human for a moment. And, so,
It's funny that you brought that up because I always thought about that. Like Leech,
mhm.
like you know, he for those of you who don't know, Leech has the mutant power to cancel powers.
Cancel
Now I don't
powers.
know
Yeah.
if it's just
Mhm.
mutant powers. Like, could he cancel Captain America's super soldier serum,
Yeah.
or could he cancel like the Fantastic Four's
I think
cosmic?
I think he just suppressed the mutant
Right.
gene, whatever the mutant gene
But
is. Yeah.
you think that he would be like Rogue would want to be his friend because now
Right.
she could be with Gambit if Leech is around. So that
Mhm.
would be a funny talk. Bring it back to funny comics.
Right.
Have Gambit and Rogue in a bedroom, and then you see the wall and Leech is sitting there playing cards. Like, can I leave yet? You know,
yeah.
sitting there playing solitaire or something like that,
Yeah.
or watching
Well, he's
TV.
always portrayed as a kid, so that would be a little icky, you know.
Oh yeah, I didn't think of that. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, it is what it is. Him.
or you know, or just
Mhm.
imagine an imaginary Jean Grey Cyclops wedding. Leech
Right.
is the ring bearer, so Scott could take off
Right.
his mask and everything like that. You know, I don't know, things like that.
Well, see, that's too clever, though. They would never think of that. You know.
I always thought like Cyclops, an interesting thing to be. Just think of all the people, the influential people in Scott Summers'
Mhm.
life. Charles Xavier, okay,
Yeah.
Jean Grey, what's her name? Frost. Why can't I think of her first name?
Emma Frost. Emma
Emma
Frost.
Frost. What do they all have in common? They're all telepaths.
Yeah.
What is it about? So
And he cheated. He cheats on all of them too.
Right. So here's a guy who is a stick in the mud,
Mm.
a control freak. His power is a curse. The only people that he can open up to with are people that can read his mind.
Right.
I think that would be a fascinating thing to explore. But
Well,
of course,
Madeline Pryor, you forgot her. But,
yeah, the Goblin Queen. Yeah,
right, right.
that's to me when I started hating Cyclops when he became a deadbeat.
Yeah, there really wasn't no way back from that.
Yeah,
you know.
that was one of those moments that
Mm.
And then they tried to. I think that she was supposed to be. I think that they were writing Cyclops out of the X-Men.
Yeah.
And then when they started X Factor, they brought him back, but they had this Madeline Pryor was a problem, so they didn't do it again. That was a misstep. That was like to me that was the equivalent of shooting Blue Beetle. So then they had to redeem Scott Summers. The only way is it was always a trick. She was the Goblin Queen. I just thought it was just like, to me that was like the worst part about comic books.
And the fact that she's Nathaniel Summers' mother. Yeah.
And don't get me started. I hate Cable. I don't like that.
Well, I once saw this great. It was a short, and it was like Scott having a nightmare about Rachel Summers and Nathaniel Summers and being their kids, and having to deal with the fact that there's a Phoenix Force and this
Phoenix Force.
They're like tearing up the house. Yeah,
I've said many times I hate the idea of the Phoenix Force.
Yeah.
You want to bring back Jean Grey? It was already in the name. Her name is Phoenix. That's Phoenix's powers. Like, if your superhero name is Hydra, you should regenerate. If your superhero name is Minotaur, you should have bull horns. If your superhero name is Phoenix, you come back from the dead. They didn't need the Phoenix Force. She kills herself on the moon, and then a couple of years later, they just find Jean Grey like walking around naked with no memories. What's going on? And they're like, oh my God. And then it's only a matter of time before she blows up again. And
well, my friend Norm, he really made a good point about Rachel Summers was probably the best use of the Phoenix Force.
I agree.
She was a really brilliant character, and they just screwed her into the ground. But she was really great character.
And she was tortured from the very beginning too, because she was used as the Hound.
She was one of the few multiverse versions of characters that actually accepted, because she was one of the first, so it was like a novelty at the time. But
she also had that Hulk out moment. She had that. She would hit that gear, and you should go like scary.
Like you said, she was tortured. She was sympathetic from the beginning.
Right. Yeah.
But to me, the Phoenix Force removed all the agency from Jean Grey. Like, it wasn't me. It was the Phoenix Force. I didn't.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well,
I think how much drama would that be? Like, oh my God, Jean Grey's back. It's going to happen again. Like, do we kill her now while she's weak? But she's innocent because she's reborn. She doesn't have any memories, but it's going to happen. I think that would have been a better story. But what do I know? I'm just a jerk.
There you go. Well, no, you think like a storyteller. You don't think like they do, but you think like a storyteller. So, the best stories and the best, comedy and stuff like that comes from what do I find funny? If you don't find anything funny, then you're never going to be able to write a joke, because the bottom line is you have to have to really truly tell a story, you have to be able to dream other people besides yourself, and you have to be able to get outside of yourself. And it's the same with comedy, same with anything. And I think all these people that can't get out of themselves, can't tell a story, because everything's going to wind up being self-insert.
I absolutely agree.
It's like Stephen Colbert. The reason why he's he used to every once in a while he'd be funny every once in a while, and but the reason why he just completely stopped being funny is because he couldn't get outside of himself. He was so politically stuck that he couldn't get outside of himself anymore. And
I wouldn't even know. I never even liked him when he was on the Colbert Report.
Well, I mean, I didn't really either, but
his face bothered me.
He did. Yeah, right.
Which is why RJ won't show his, because he knows it's over. As soon as I see what this guy looks like, we are done.
Well, we all have speculations of what RJ looks like. I'm thinking more along the lines of a Tolkien type with a pipe. That's what I would imagine. So,
Uh,
you know,
Well, just to change the subject, John,
I
I was thinking about your question, and I would say Daredevil would probably be my best go-to for that because he's
Mhm.
very much a Greek-like character because Greek gods used to curse you with one thing, but
yeah,
then bless you with something else to make up for the curse, right? And
right,
that's what
Right.
happened because he loses his sight and then he gains his other ability. But at the
Mhm.
same time, that's a character. Well, I think Frank Miller was just tailor-made to write that character just
Yeah.
because the
yeah,
character you got to understand darkness for someone who is blind for almost his entire life, and
right,
he did understand that sort of dark side and that darkness, that living in darkness and not being able to see things, and
yeah.
that tragedy in his life. So that would be my go-to.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah. I I
Mhm.
I, I love, and that's what always attracted me to Marvel comics over DC as a kid was like the weaknesses. I
Well,
I, I
I was thinking this the other day. The big difference between DC and Marvel is that in DC, the superhero is the actual identity, and in Marvel, the superhero is the alter ego, and that
yeah, that's
the
a good point. Yeah.
that's like a
Clark
very
Kent is the costume. Yeah.
right. Clark Kent is the costume, but in Marvel, Matt Murdock is the real guy, and Daredevil's the costume,
Right.
and
Even Bruce Wayne is an act.
right.
Like that's a good
Yeah,
point.
I was thinking about that difference, and it seems subtle, but it's actually makes all the difference in the world.
And also
Superman,
the
right?
weaknesses bothered me. Like the color
Yeah,
yellow. That's
right.
and then and Marvel had it at first, like Thor with the hammer, but that kind of made
Yeah,
sense. That hammer was the source of his power. If he let it
yeah.
go for a minute.
But then he had to be Robert Blake.
Right?
Who's the
Who's the
cripple?
exact opposite? Yeah, he had,
Yeah,
and he was a healer instead of a warrior. You know,
right.
yeah. And then of course my favorite, Ben Grimm, the Thing.
Yeah.
What kid doesn't think that they're an odd misfit monster at some point in their life?
Oh
You
yeah,
know, that's
definitely.
I and somebody said, and I forget who it was. Maybe it was you who said Ben Grimm was always talking about the blue-eyed thing. I always mentioned,
Yeah,
and he says, their theory was that was the only part of him that didn't change. That was the only
right,
part of him that was still when he was Ben Grimm before the Thing. So he was always referencing his blue eyes. And
right.
I'm like, I don't know if that's what Stan and Jack meant, but that is brilliant. That is
Mhm.
really good. That's something that.
Um, Michael Motrowski, Motranowski,
Yeah, I
actually
butchered his
had a
name too. Sorry, Mike. This is two
yeah.
channels. You get your name murdered on. I apologize.
Well, he has a good point. He said DC is gods pretending to be men, and Marvel is men pretending to be gods.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's one thing that was so beautiful about Marvel was that uh, it was like the heroes outside, every day outside your door. It's supposed to be like your next door hero. You could, Peter Parker could stop a bus and save people's lives, but then he might get evicted because he couldn't meet his
Yeah.
rent. You know,
His
and
boss. He's
yeah,
one of the greatest superheroes in the world. He goes to work and his boss is like, "Shut up!
yeah.
Get to work, you
Why
slacker."
are these pizzas all crumpled up? And it's
Yeah.
like,
Why are you 15 minutes late, you slacker? It's like,
it's,
stop the nuclear power
and
plant
then
from.
you had J. Jonah Jameson like bad mouthing him all the time, and it's like Perry White. It's like, oh gee gosh golly willikers, we love Superman, and you got J. Jonah Jameson like, damn that Spider Man, he's a menace, and
That's funny because as an editor of books and trying to get the artists and everybody to do the things, I kind of feel
yeah,
like JJJ sometimes.
right, yeah, exactly. Oh man, there's this a comic I really tempted to get a hold of where J. Jonah Jameson, Peter Parker actually took his mask off to J. Jonah Jameson, and then Jameson's like, because Jameson was like so angry at Spider-Man and it was like destroying his life, and Peter Parker's like, okay, it's time to take this mask off. And then J. Jonah Jameson's like, "Why did you do this to me?" And he's like, "I was trying to save you." And he's like, he needed that hate, he needed that anger, and finding out it was
Is that
yeah.
still going on? Like what year was that? Because I
It's pretty recent. I just
yeah,
saw like a
that must be after I
video.
stopped. I wonder.
Yeah.
Because now aren't they like buddies now?
Yeah,
And
they are, right. Yeah.
I,
That's evidently that's what changed things, you know.
I always found it a little unrealistic that that
Right.
Someone who tries to kill him over and over again gets to be
yes,
his friend
he
now.
has the proof.
Well,
I
Peter took him to task over that. And J. Jonah Jameson is like, well, you can't, you can't blame me. And he's like, I can blame you for Rhino. I can blame you for Scorpion. I can blame
yeah, the
for
Spider Slayers. How
the
many?
Spider Slayers. You know,
Just because he J. Jonah Jameson was a supervillain. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
he's no different than Lex Luthor. He just wasn't as
Right.
good at it. And it's funny 'cause back in the old forums, remember back in like
Right.
those forums, that was one of the things I was always like, Jameson is a super. People would just call me every sort of nasty name in the world. I'm like, what's the difference between him and Lex Luthor?
Yeah.
Lex Luthor made Bizarro. Lex Luthor made Metallo. Jameson made the Spider Slayer. He made the Rhino. He made Scorpion. He made the Fly. There's another one. Yeah. What's the difference?
Well, it's funny because I actually thought when I read those pages, I was like, this is actually pretty decently written. I was like, what the hell? This guy slipped through the door at Marvel. What the hell? I mean, I hadn't seen anything decently written
They
in
probably
Marvel in a long
escorted him
time.
out. Wait a minute. People like this. Get out
Wait
of
a
here.
second. Well, it's
Oh,
like that guy that was
man.
just killing Beta Ray Bill. They weren't going to give. They had no work on the docs for him after Beta Ray Bill, and where everybody was like, "Wow, he put it on the map," and it's like this guy's good. And then here's comes Skybound in and says, "Hey, you want to do Transformers?" And it's like, "Yeah," But it was like for some reason Marvel wasn't going to give him any more work, and then Skybound's like, "You're good. You got game. Come on, kid." It's like, what, meritocracy? What? Yeah.
Now,
But
let's just say this metal straw
uh-huh.
is a magic wand, and I could go bing. It's a perfect world, and you could write whatever comic. Because I know all three of us are writers. Coop, you're not an artist, right? Yeah, none of us can draw.
No,
So
I'm a writer.
you're going to be able to write your favorite comic book property. What would that be?
Grant Emerson Damage.
There's an obscure one. We were talking about obscure books.
Well, he wasn't meant to be obscure. He was going to be a big character, and then they mishandled him. Yeah.
RJ, do you remember Damage?
You have to describe him a little more because I'm so visual.
Well, he's the kid that was like all the genetic potential of the Justice Society, and Randall Salvage like took all the genetic potential of the Justice Society,
Right.
and built this kid out of it. And then he was the first thing he did was like blow up downtown Atlanta because he couldn't control himself. And it's like everywhere he went, he just caused property damage, and and he was like looked at like a villain, but he was just this kid trying to like survive.
Yeah, he was an innocent kid who couldn't control his powers. Yeah, and he was like purposely overpowered. That was the point of him.
Right, but the thing about it was at the same time that he was like overpowered, he was also trying to deal with the fact that he found out that he was artificial, and that his that the parents that his adopted parents that he thought hated him actually did hate him because they were basically employees, and so
how many issues did that last?
It lasted about 22 issues, I think.
That many? Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. I remember that came out. RJ, right. What would you write if? And I think I already know the answer.
Honestly, well, I got two answers for that because one of them are right now would be Conan because I'm doing Destroyer. Right. But if I had to write something else, it would be Wolverine. We're talking early Wolverine though.
Yeah. Now, would you make Wolverine like violent and bloody and everything? Because basically his power is he has built-in knives.
I loved that miniseries where he was in Japan just because he was flipping back and forth between one and the other, right? You could get an honorable man and someone who's going, on the chest level until you push him to the extreme, and then he just loses it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if he loses it, friend or foe, you're all in deep shit,
Yeah.
I've always loved that part of his character, you know, that berserker rage or whatever, that he
Yeah,
could
and
go
we
there.
we were talking
Mhm.
about John Byrne earlier in the stream. I cannot, as a kid, I could not get that picture out of my head. The early
Mhm.
John Byrne X-Men where he's down in the
In the
sewers and he's just ripping guys apart.
Yeah.
that is the issue that I think launched Wolverine as a superstar. That was
Yeah.
before that he was just another guy in the X-Men. After that issue, he was the superstar. That was I
Mhm.
I took a class in high school called law, and like we had to like pretend to be lawyers
Mhm.
and argue cases and stuff. And behind the judge's table, the teacher, there was some kid drew that frame of Wolverine coming out. You know,
Wow.
Wolverine stands. And at the time, I remember because I knew, but it wasn't cool to admit you knew comics. So
Yeah.
a lot of people were like, who is that guy? And the teacher was just like, I don't know, but he's a tough guy, and he's going to back me up if you break the rules in class. And I'm like, that's Wolverine. That's from the health. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it shows you at one point people didn't know who Wolverine was, and but
Right.
that picture was you know iconic. I hate that word, but I guess it makes sense here.
Well, I also like the Madripoor run with Wolverine. You know, when he was
I was
Patch.
talking about that on my stream
Yeah.
right before this. Everybody, Madripoor was everything. It was spies, it was
Mhm.
superhero, it was ninjas, it was gangsters, you know, and it was like Far East Milton Caniff adventures.
Yeah.
That one had it all.
Well, I love the fact that when Joe Fixit showed up, and like and Wolverine pretty much like stabbed him in the back, you know, and they were like ready to part, and he just plants him one right into the ground. It's like it's this crater where he had just pounded him into the ground. And then Wolverine's like crawling out of it. He's like, "How did you know I'd survive that?" And Joe Fix is like, "I didn't know you'd survive it." You know, he said, "I didn't know. Yeah, I was trying to kill you, man." But it was he's like I'm glad you're Joe Fixit, not Hulk. You know, because if you were the Hulk, you would I might not have survived it. You know,
Yeah.
even with my healing factor. But
Here's another
great.
question. You just made me think of this. What were some great like tactics of comics? You know, like a superhero, like a surprise tactic. The one I'll use as an example is a Wolverine and Daredevil show up to arrest the Punisher.
Mhm.
So Punisher just goes, "You got me. Like I can't fight Wolverine and Daredevil." He goes,
Right.
"I'm gonna go to jail and I'm never gonna come out again. There's a bar right across the street. Can we
Right.
get it? Can we get a beer before I go to jail? What am I gonna do?" So
Right.
Wolverine, yeah, of course, Daredevil's on edge. So they
Mhm.
go into the bar and he's like, "Can I order a steak? You know, I'm going to jail. Can I get
Mm.
my last meal?" So he gets a steak. So of course he gets the steak knife, and he's eating, and he's talking to him. And he's like, "So what's your deal, Daredevil? I got the super senses,
Right.
and blah, blah, blah." But Daredevil knows there's something up, and Wolverine's buying into the honorable thing. He's like, "You can regenerate from anything." He's like, "Yeah." So
Yeah.
Wolverine stabs him in the groin with the knife and throws pepper in Daredevil's face, and then jumps up and takes a shotgun and just blah, 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 Wolverine,
Right.
you know, and then he knows he can't win, and runs out. While Wolverine's regenerating through all of this, and Wolverine's like, "Yeah, let him go." He you know,
He earned it. Yeah.
I love that tactic. You know,
Right.
and that's why I like to punish. He you know, charmed his way in, assessed the situation, got the information. You know, like a perfect military officer. So,
See, that was the great thing about comics back in the day is the interactions that weren't like superhero fights. They were like people, just ordinary people interacting, you know. And it's like it was just cool that you know, like Spider-Man and Peter Parker could have a conversation with Matt Murdock, you know, and it's just some of the like basically the sideline things that would happen, you know. People you wouldn't expect to, you know, hang out together and wind up with each other.
Then it was a big deal when Spider-Man showed up in the Avengers,
Yeah.
or Wolverine showed up. You know, now it's just
Right.
they just might as well. There's no borders. Everybody just pops up and you know, and
Yeah.
everybody's. But RJ, do you have any moments that you remember, like the superheroes just did a tactic that was like, wow, that was clever?
Well, it wouldn't be so much a tactic, but the thing that just comes up in my mind is There's actually two instances of this within the X-Men books. They're a little bit different, but when Juggernaut thought he killed Dazzler and he buried her, she had to basically use any sound that she could even grasp on. It was like wind blowing through the
Oh wow.
grass and like skittering of bugs and stuff like that in order to get enough power in order to blast herself out of that. And there's another example of that exact same thing later on with Bishop, where he's stuck in a snowstorm and he uses the kinetic energy of the snow hitting him to actually keep himself warm.
Wow.
Oh, that's clever.
I like when Daredevil was fighting Claw, and Claw's a sonic being, so Daredevil's his hearing was like really hard for him. Claw was just kicking his ass,
Oh,
and
I
then
guess creating static or whatever. That's
yeah,
brilliant. I never would have thought of that.
but then he like drops through the skylight into this building, and he's like sitting over here, and he's like fiddling around in the dark. And Claw like comes in with like a sonic tiger coming at him or whatever, and then all of a sudden he turns around and he turns on this tone generator and disrupts the shit out of Claw, and Claw basically is disabled. And he's like, well, how did you hear that frequency? Because he's like he could hear the resonating frequency that Claw was resonating at was
Oh yeah.
which was subsonic. And he's like, how did you know that frequency? Daredevil just didn't even answer him, but that was like a one shot, but it was really clever.
I love stuff like that, like a little clever use of the
Because he
superhero.
was kicking his ass. I mean, he was bleeding from his ears, and he was just kicking his ass all around Hell's Kitchen. And then he like drops through that into the electronics store. It turns out later you see it's an electronics store, and he used a tone generator to disrupt Claw. And I just thought that was just genius. That's back when people could just write. I mean, they could just write.
Clever little, twists and turns in the comic.
Oh yeah. Weezy Samuelson with writing, the transformation of Archangel. She actually created Apocalypse to transform Angel into Archangel. How brilliant is that? That you just create this iconic supervillain just because you wanted to
Oh,
change
really?
Angel
So she
into
made
Archangel.
she made Apocalypse with the sole intention of transforming. Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, I mean
At
that's how
least,
genius she is. I mean, she's just like, okay, I need a change agent to create the pathway to get
yeah,
Angel to Archangel, because he had this great idea for Archangel. Because Wolverine was so big at that time, and she's like, well, what happens if our Angel had like metal wings? How do I get to that? And because he was Wheezy Samuelson and just a genius, she
yeah.
was able to. She's like, well, I need a change agent, four horsemen of the apocalypse.
And at the same time, she was writing Power Pack, which was a nice little fun
Power
comic.
Pack changed my life. The
I
Mutant
love Power
Massacre. Yeah. Because she kept them as kids. And it's like, how the
Right.
hell did she keep them as kids? But,
Most comic book people write children as miniature adults, but
Yeah.
she wrote them as kids. She did a good
I mean, they
job.
were brats. They like scuffled or complained
Yeah,
with each other. And you had one that was a little weepy, and she was always like crying. And it's just like, they were kids. They were freaking kids. And it's just astounding. And I don't think her and
Here's another question then.
Yeah.
Are
ahead.
there any characters you just don't like? Just, it doesn't matter. It's like, through no fault of it, it's like you just don't get them. You don't like them.
Go ahead,
Or-
RJ.
Yeah.
I'll let you lead off on this.
Yeah, I'd have to think about that one for a minute. But I have to say, going back to the Power Pack just for 1 second,
Go ahead.
I love they kept that innocence into even the X-Men book where Barry Windsor Smith did that great one shot with Wolverine, and the
Mhm.
Power Pack were in the snowstorm there.
Yeah.
Again, brilliant use of those characters.
Yeah.
But I'll think on your other question, John.
Well, the one I'm going to give it is Cloak and Dagger. I I tried. I bought all of their issues, but I think the problem is that even the storytellers didn't know what to do with them. You know what I mean? Like they came up with a cool concept. One's darkness, one's light, and then like they never really defined their powers. Like they had a real lame weakness. I mean, real lame origin, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Like and then what do we do with them? They just like kind of just had no. They had no important story, and I really wanted to like them, and I just never did. And I know that's some people's gonna be like, that's my favorite character. No
Right.
disrespect. I wanted to like them. I just didn't. I just couldn't get into them.
Well, mine would probably be the entire team of Runaways.
Oh, you never
I
liked the Runaways?
Never warmed to any of them.
Did
Warmed
you
to
buy
any
the
of 'em.
comics and still like I did?
Yeah.
I bought all the Cloak and Daggers. I just like, why am I don't like this.
Yeah, well, I mean, I bought the whole entire Joss Whedon run.
Well,
But
there you go.
I mean, I'm okay with Joss Whedon most of the time, but I guess I was getting burned out on Whedon-esque. The thing about it is people misunderstand. The people that are trying to ape Whedon misunderstand that all of the power of his writing came from the characters. Yeah, all the humor came from the characters. The start came from the characters, but he also had straight characters that didn't understand the joke. But and everybody just wants everybody just to be snark fest, but they don't understand that the beauty of Whedon's writing, why it was so, why it was so revolutionary, was the fact that he understood character interactions, and he was okay with having characters that were assholes, and but he found a way to like mix it in. Buffy was a really vapid character, but he found a way to give her, have depth with the people around her.
That was a good show.
But the problem with Whedon writing today, the reason why all these people trying to write Whedon-esque, dialogue and stuff, they don't understand that the dialogue wasn't the point. The characters was the point.
Yeah, they took the worst of, and then we get Gail Simone.
Yeah. That's how you get Gail Simone. You want to know how you get Gail Simone? That's how you get Gail Simone.
I made a joke today on Twitter. I said, from now on, I'm going to tweet like I'm Gail Simone. Wolverine's claws are spoons. Every time I see her tweet, I just, and it keeps popping up. And every time I do, I see less often. I don't want.
Yeah.
What if Superman used his cape as a napkin? I'm like, why do people buy her comics?
Oh, she's getting an X-Men run, right?
Yeah. I can't wait to not buy that. RJ, any characters you just tried to like, but you don't?
Yeah, honestly, I could say the whole Valiant line, but really it was Magnus the Robot Fighter. I really, really wanted to like that book. I just wanted that to take off, and I bought everything from Valiant, but I really liked the Magnus idea, and they just destroyed the entire character. It was just awful. I said it on Twitter probably like 2-3 months ago, but the whole robots right thing where they have to have, their own society, and no, I just want to see this guy destroying robots. That's all I want, right?
There you go.
Yeah. Robot fighter, smash robot. It's like a Turok, son of whatever, fighting the dinosaurs. And next thing you find out, it's an allegory for human rights. No, smash a dinosaur, eat the dinosaur, ride the dinosaur. But did you get the old Magnus Robot Fighter? That was like an old Dell comic, right? That was brought into.
It was Gold Key at one time too.
Gold Key. I always get those two companies mixed up.
Yeah. Well, that's.
I like Michael Unpronounceable's comment over here. Also, people trying to copy Joss Whedon's writing style today have no friends and are only children, so they have no frame of reference. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Josh Whedon, there's like 6 people in his family. Yeah. So, they probably had to talk fast and quickly just to get a word in edgewise at the dinner table.
Right.
But you're absolutely right.
Well, it's like
Michael there is describing Marika Tamaki. Like literally, I did an entire video on one of her interviews where she's saying, "Yes, use television as your life experience." I'm going, "What? No."
No. And this is how you get I Am Not Starfire. Okay, that's how you get I Am Not Starfire. So
is she still working?
Yeah.
I hope she's working someplace, but is she still?
Well, they can't fire her. She'll accuse them of racism. They can't fire her. She pulled the race card on Stevie Sobolski. That's how she got her job, right?
Oh, Russ Manning on Magnus was epic. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I Gold Key and Dell Comics are a glaring hole in my comic book knowledge and collection.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that reason why comics got so strong was because you had right now it's like capes and cows are so overused, but once upon a time you had horror comics, you had romantic comics,
Yep.
you had comics like that were like for kids, you had comics that were for adults, you had comics that were for ladies, you had
Yeah.
comics that were for guys, you had the army comics and things like that. And I
Now
think
you
when
have
they
to go out
narrowed
and
that,
acknowledge the difference between ladies and guys.
there's a huge difference between ladies and guys, right? Now, what we're getting now is romantic comics that are disguised as cape and cow comics, and
Yeah.
like it's not working.
I like this. Tony
Gay
Green,
romance comics.
he says he can't stand current day Harley Quinn. It's funny is I'm actually wearing a shirt, John Con. This was like a board game convention that I grew out of my birthday party, and one of my friends brought a date, and this girl came in, and she just wore the Harley Quinn shirt, the white shirt with like the two different color sleeves, and and all I could think of is like, oh God, Harley Quinn's over. This woman girl's wearing a Harley Quinn shirt. It's over for Harley Quinn. I can't stand it. So you're absolutely right, Tony Grigo. There comes a point where like oversaturation destroys it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I honestly think, Harley Quinn is just a bad take on Typhoid Mary.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Yeah. I liked her as, in the animated series, the Paul Dini version, where she was just, I was actually felt bad for her. She was just this mentally disturbed girl that had like an infatuation or an obsession with the serial killer. And Joker would like abuse her and be nasty to her, and she just jumped up like a punching bag. And yes, that's a bad role model for women, but that's not the point of the character. She's supposed to be a damaged, flawed, tragic character, pretending to laugh with the Joker. I thought she was brilliant, and now she's, super lesbian girl boss running around like, she dies and comes back to life. Like, I don't know. She's no different than Bugs Bunny now. She's just
that's the example that I was talking about before about how limitations make the best writing, because they had so many limitations in that show, the things that they could not do. And how do you show a supervillain is a supervillain like Joker without actually doing that, without disturbing children? That was a beautiful way to do it. He kept on just knocking her down, and she would like a puppy, like you said, keep on coming back to him. That just proved how nasty a character that was, even though they couldn't show he was a nasty character.
Right. Like I felt bad for her, and then when like Batman would confront Harley Quinn, Batman didn't beat her up or anything, because he just this is a damaged person who's being taken advantage of by a more disturbed person. I thought she was a brilliant, fun character.
Yeah.
Plus she was his psychiatrist, and Joker was such a twisted, evil genius that he like Sauron, like when Sauron goes to Numenor and he works his way up to manipulating the king and it causes the destruction of Numenor, not through violence, but through persuasion. I found the same thing. Joker manipulated this brilliant psychiatrist into being this poor, abused woman. It's great character. Yeah, it's not a heroic character. It's not. She's supposed to be a flawed, tragic character.
Whoever when they designed her, somebody who understood the appeal of chaos.
Somebody understood the appeal of writing and characters
because there's something inherently like freeing about somebody, removing your restraints and saying, you don't have to be nice to people. You don't have to follow the structure. You can just burn it all to the ground, and
Tony Grigo said she's lesbian roller derby rip off Deadpool. Absolutely. I don't like Deadpool.
Well, I mean, but that's back when there was writing, that's back when people understood,
and I agree with Warren the Archangel. Batman the animated series was brilliant. It's still my favorite incarnation of Batman. Batman the animated series, Mask of the Phantasm, and Subpolar were best Batman movies. They were actually Batman.
Mm-hmm.
No live action movies. They're movies called Batman, but to me, they're not Batman movies.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, occasionally there's just something there, you know. I mean, it is as trite as it is these days. You know, I remember when I first heard the teaser trailer for The Dark Knight, and first time I heard Heath Ledger do the Joker voice,
I
and
thought Heath Ledger was
every
excellent as the Joker. Yeah,
every hair on the back of my neck
yeah,
rose up, and
I was so excited that they were doing a creepy Joker.
I was one of those people. It's like Heath Ledger is the Joker. There's no way.
I kind of got excited. So they're going to do a new twist because I hated Jack Nicholson as the Joker. I hated Tim Burton Batman movies. Those Batman shows up in an armored car, drops a bomb, machine guns come out, pop, 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 pop. That wasn't Batman. Did Tim Burton read a Batman comic?
That's funny you say that, John, because you know I went to the movies actually watching the old campy Batman. So you know,
right.
the other 80s Batman wasn't so bad after that.
Right.
With the the 60s Batman with the shark repellent.
Yeah. I remember when Tim Burton was going to do Batman, they masked Michael Keaton. It was funny because the guys at work were like, "Oh, Batman, Biff Pow, Batman," you know what I mean? So I recognize that the Tim Burton movies changed the way the public views Batman. But I remember I was sitting with my friend Phil, and that scene where the bat plane goes up into the clouds. And I just said, this movie is so cheesy.
Yeah, everybody in the theater groaned when I went to see that the first time.
And Jack Nicholson, tell me that guy just didn't do the bare minimum. Just, you know, he just telephoned it. And I'll even go on record and saying I didn't even like Prince's music. Bat dance. I was like, this is everything about this movie is just, you know, telephoning it in. Everybody did exactly what was expected of. So with Coop, you're right. When I heard Heath Ledger was going to be the Joker, I was like, this might not be the Joker that I want, but I bet you it's going to be different and creepy. And I would,
if you, I watch this guy who does tips on writings, Brandon something other. I can't remember his last name,
Sanderson?
No, it's not Sanderson. I can't remember his last name, but he was talking about the anatomy of that scene where you know, the Joker basically creates Harvey the Two-Face, you know, and where he basically talks him into becoming this thing, right? And he has this brilliant line where he's like, "You're behind all of this," and he says, "Do I look like a kind of man that has a plan?" You know. And it was just like so reasonable at that moment, and it is just like it's like had so many gears to that portrayal. I mean, you know, Jack Nicholson was all one note, but Heath Ledger, you know, he could be really charming, and you could understand that, you know, why these people would follow this guy, because you know you're sitting there and suddenly all this chaos sounds reasonable to you. And it's like that's the beauty of that character was he was able to make somebody like Joker seem like an inevitable, you know, outpouring of society.
By the last movie with Bane, I was like, what's going on? Like,
yeah,
I was like, I think I lost me in this. I'm just gonna wait for the punching scenes because I don't really understand what's going on.
Right, yeah. They should just ended on Dark Knight. That wouldn't have hurt my feelings. They just ended on Dark Knight.
All right. Well, actually, since on that note, I think we're going to have to hang up on our stream here because we've gone for about an hour and 25 minutes. Thank you very much for showing up, Coop. It was good to talk comics with the two of you and just have a relaxing evening discussing new and old comics. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Always fun.
And I want to thank everybody else from the chat who's been here. And next week, I will be on John's channel and doing a Make Comics Great Again, or Fun Again, here on my channel after that. So I'll see you all next week. And thank you once again, Coop and John, for a wonderful evening.
All right, thanks a lot. Bye-bye, everybody.
Have a good one.